Why do we compare books and films? Books are read in peace, while films are watched in crowds. Yes, many films are originally based on text, but what connections can we draw from two completely different styles of art? The truth is, books and films have always been intertwined, but their connection digs deeper than putting pen to paper and paper to screen. Adapters, by definition, bring a story to the screen, but the reinterpretation of meaning is what separates the good from the great. The two films I will discuss that were adapted from a text are Spike Lee's BlacKkKlansman and Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown. Lee adapts a memoir about infiltrating the KKK, while Tarantino turns a crime novel into a story about black identity. BlacKkKlansman, a memoir written by Ron Stallworth, tells the story of his investigation of the KKK in the 70s. Through phone calls and letters, while a white police officer posed as him in person, Stallworth exposed the KKK's activities, revealing their incompetence and the dangers of white supremacy. Rum Punch, written by Elmer Leonard, follows Jackie Burke, a pretty, white flight attendant who smuggles cash for an arms dealer but gets caught by the feds and must outmaneuver both the law and the criminals to secure her freedom. Both directors take creative liberties that aren't just about storytelling choices, they're about emphasizing racial identity and power structures. Now that I've introduced the origins of these films, let's talk about each director's very different approaches to their adaptations. Spike Lee stays true to the core of the memoir, but highlights its themes by tying it directly to modern racism, most directly through the real-life footage from Charlottesville he decided to include at the end. In the article Adapting BlacKkKlansman, based upon some for real shit, author Delphine Letort writes, "The ending sequence of BlacKkKlansman is completely at odds with the rest of the film's tone, sacrificing the post-racial fantasy of the plot to the brutal and then recent reality of Charlottesville, Virginia, where 1,000 white nationalists and neo-Nazis organized a march to protest the removal of a statue of Civil War General Robert E. Lee. This last-minute decision by Lee to add this footage ties past racism to the present perfectly and clearly for every audience member to see. He didn't want any single person leaving that theater questioning whether pure racism is still prevalent in the United States." Jason Baker, a college professor and author of the article BlacKkKlansman and the Sheets of the Past, Toward a Theory of Blacklash Cinema, writes, "Lee borrows blaxploitation aesthetics, samples canonized Hollywood film, and incorporates citizen cell phone footage to distill and link eras of the nation's racialized past for contemporary viewers." Baker discusses how Spike Lee reimagines the temporal structure of BlacKkKlansman through his fast track to the present. Lee reshapes Stallworth's memoir about the past to show everyone that it is also the present. Using costumes, music, and great dialogue, Lee brings us back in time to Stallworth's story and then back to reality. It is a perfect mix of two worlds that are probably less different than we may have imagined walking into the theater. On the other hand, Tarantino adapted Rum Punch in a much different way, shifting the setting from Florida to LA and casting a black, aging actress as his lead in a story following a young, pretty white woman. Tarantino, while not viewed the same way as Lee, was also making a political and racial statement with his film. Jackie Brown caught the attention of Adila Funama, an author and professor of African American Studies at Loyola Marymount University. In an article about the author's opinion on the film, David Roche writes, "Nama celebrates Jackie Brown for the way it is most noticeably invested in the intersection of race and economics and frames much of its racial dynamics with the limitations of frustrated class aspirations. Nama saw the adaptation as a deep dive into the complexities of race and economic struggles, offering a nuanced portrayal of Jackie's challenges. While Lee reshaped the story about race and society to further the message, Tarantino took a crime story and gave it a message about race and society." Spike Lee's BlacKkKlansman and Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown reshaped their source material by reimagining key characters, altering the temporal structure, and employing distinct formalist cinematic techniques to emphasize racial identity. Both directors used their adaptations to critique and reinterpret contemporary racism, with Lee amplifying historical urgency through direct engagement and Tarantino subverting genre expectations to explore racial power dynamics. Both directors, as we commonly see in adaptations, reimagine their main characters. Lee made Stallworth a more explicitly political figure while emphasizing his double life as a black man and a police officer. He used this duality to highlight systemic racism. In Stallworth's memoir, he wrote, "If one black man, aided by a bevy of good, decent, dedicated, open, and liberal-minded whites and Jews can succeed in prevailing over a group of white racists by making them look like the ignorant fools they truly are, then imagine what a nation of like-minded individuals can accomplish." In the film, Lee expands on this theme by making Stallworth's fight against racism explicitly political and ongoing. The climax juxtaposes Ron and Flip's success in exposing the KKK with the real-world resurgence of white supremacy, ending in the chilling transition to the footage from the 2017 Charlottesville rally. By doing so, Lee reinforces the memoir's idea of collaboration against racism, but also highlights that the struggle is far from over. This edition turns Stallworth into more than just an undercover cop. He becomes a symbol of the broader fight against systemic racism. As I discussed, Tarantino changes his main character completely from white Jackie Burke to black Jackie Brown. While we can compare messages and moments in Stallworth's memoir and Lee's film, Rum Punch isn't primarily about race. What we can do is look at the differences in the way society treats each Jackie and analyze how powerful race is. One thing Jackie Burke and Jackie Brown share in common is that they were both arrested. As the novel describes it, when Jackie Burke gets arrested, she is booked, printed, and taken to a cell, the routine. However, when Jackie Brown describes her arrest, she says that they make her strip down like a criminal and wear handcuffs like a criminal. It is no secret that white and black people are often treated differently by the police, and Tarantino used this adaptation to show how powerful this switch of race is to the story and to the character. Jackie is no longer just an aging flight attendant caught up in a scheme. She's a black woman navigating a system that is inherently more stacked against her due to her race. As shown from the original to the adaptation, though presented in different ways, the difference between being white and black can make the same character be seen as two different people. Larger than the characters themselves, both directors also altered the temporal structure of their stories. Spike Lee's film was mostly chronological, then ends with the Charlottesville footage. Jackie Brown, however, is a Tarantino signature with its non-linear structure including flashbacks and perspective shifts. He modernized the 1970s blaxploitation films he loved, including long dialogue scenes across a slower-paced film. Tarantino wanted everyone in his audience to be immersed into his childhood and become a little kid in 1970s Knoxville in the middle of a black theater. Both directors also used different cinematic techniques to create racial themes. Spike Lee used high-contrast lighting in many scenes to emphasize the tension. To force audience engagement, Lee also broke the fourth wall multiple times, including using his famous double dolly shot. Finally, Lee found the perfect balance between comedy and horror, giving him the ability to deliver an important message while keeping his audience engaged and happy. Jackie Brown, as mentioned earlier, uses long dialogue scenes to make all the interactions feel grounded yet naturally tense. This is similar to the blaxploitation films of the 70s, and to continue this connection, Tarantino also used a very saturated color palette. The biggest tool he used to put us in this time machine is his use of 70s funk music. Tarantino included past hits such as Across 110th Street by Bobby Womack and the Peace and Natural High by Bloodstone. Both films demonstrate how adaptation is not just about retelling a story, but about reshaping narratives to highlight deeper social and racial themes. Lee and Tarantino both accomplish this through different approaches. Lee directly engages with history to connect to the present, while Tarantino subverts genre expectations to explore racial power dynamics in a fresh new way. Yet, both directors use their adaptations to challenge audiences' perceptions of race, power, and identity. Ultimately, literature and film have a long history of influencing how we understand the world around us. As more stories are adapted for the screen, filmmakers have the opportunity and responsibility to reshape narratives in a way that reflects and critiques society. The question moving forward should not be how well an adaptation copied its source material, but how effectively it uses its platform to change or further a message.